Good morning, everyone. Waramutse. Do you remember? Waramutse neza. Turabashimi etiani makeda na Darian, thank you so much. We are very grateful that you have joined us here today. My name is David Tuvi, and I will be the moderator for this first plenary panel discussion. And I'm incredibly excited to welcome our distinguished guests today to talk about how we can take charge of our future. Today's panel will be an intergenerational discussion with incredibly passionate individuals from across the Commonwealth who you'll get to meet in just a moment. Now, we've heard this morning that there are 1.2 billion young people across the Commonwealth. Can we give a shout out for all these incredible young people all across the Commonwealth? We've also heard that we need to have a bit of a system reboot from the Masharika performance. So we have 1.2 billion young people. That means we have at least 1.2 billion solutions to the problems we face, whether it's climate change, whether it's biodiversity loss, whether it's the health challenges we may face. So we have an incredible opportunity to, thank you, we have an incredible opportunity to draw on the power, the potential, the passion of young people all across the Commonwealth. I'd now like to begin by inviting our esteemed panelists to the stage, and as I call out your name and read your biography, please come and join us on the stage. I'll begin with Rijve Arifin, the co-chair of Awareness 360. A big round of applause to Rijve. Rijve is an award-winning community development practitioner and dedicated youth activist. He was recently named among the Forbes 30 under 30, which is incredibly cool. And he was highlighted as the featured honoree for social impact. He also received the Diana Award for his humanitarian work. He works at the UN Global Compact as the Target Gender Equality Advisor, and he is the co-founder and co-chair of the global youth-led organization Awareness 360. He's also a Royal Commonwealth Society Fellow. So a big welcome for Rijve, please. I'd now like to welcome Kaylee Mycroft, who is the co-founder of the Kaylee campaign. Kaylee is a globally recognized ability activist, having awarded the International Children's Peace Prize, the Medal for Social Activism from the Nobel Peace Laureates, and the World of Children Youth Award. In 2017, Kaylee won the Turner Social Change Prize, and in 2018 was welcomed as an Obama Foundation Africa leader. In 2019, she was appointed to the Global Board of Generation Unlimited, a global initiative housed under UNICEF. So a big round of applause and welcome for Kaylee. Thank you. I'd now like to welcome Kendall Vincent, who is the Caribbean Regional Youth Chairperson. Welcome, Kendall. A big round of applause for Kendall. Kendall is an impact-driven, multi-dimensional professional. As the chairperson of the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, Kendall is a thought leader who is passionate about the holistic development of children and youth. He's an experienced public relations and communications professional within the not-for-profit sector. Welcome, Kendall. It gives me great pleasure now to invite Chido Mpemba to the stage. Chido is the Special Envoy on Youth, appointed in the Office of the Chairperson of the African Union, and is the youngest diplomat and senior official in the Chairperson's Cabinet. She is a Pan-African youth activist on a mission to use her strengths, influence, and voice to lead work that changes the lives of young people across the continent. A big welcome to Chido. I would now like to invite Mitwa Ngame to the stage, the Chief Executive Officer of MTN Rwanda. Welcome, Mitwa. Mitwa is one of the youngest CEOs in the telecommunications industry in Africa. With a career spanning more than 10 years in telecoms, she joined MTN Rwanda in October 2019. And I have to say, Mitwa has become an honorary Rwandan very quickly. So, karibu sana, murakaze neza, Mitwa. Mitwa is a highly respected leader with experience in commerce, technology, and growth strategies. And if you follow Mitwa on Twitter, I think she's probably one of the funnest bosses in Rwanda as well. It's now my pleasure to invite Rita Roy, the President and CEO of the Mastercard Foundation, to the stage. Welcome, Rita. Rita leads the Mastercard Foundation, which is one of the largest private foundations in the world, with approximately 40 billion in assets. Its vision is a world where everyone has the opportunity to learn and prosper. Rita is deeply committed to equity and inclusion and has worked tirelessly to build a foundation that is collaborative and known for bold action and transformative impact. Welcome, Rita. I would now like to invite the Honorary Minister of Youth and Culture from Rwanda, Rosemary Mbabazi. The Minister has served in the Government of Rwanda since 2017 as Minister. Her portfolio was initially focused on youth and was expanded to youth and culture. Prior to that, she served as the Permanent Secretary in the Ministries of Youth and ICT, as well as Trade. Welcome, Minister. Can we give a big round of applause for our distinguished panel? So as you can see, we have an incredibly diverse range of people here. I'm glad to see that there are more women than men on the panel, and I am no doubt that we will have an incredibly enlightening and inspiring discussion today. I want to turn directly now to Kaylee. I would love for you to share, what is your vision for the world? What is your vision for the future? We've heard that we need to take charge, and to take charge we need to know where we're going. So where do you see the world? Where do you want it to go?
I think, first of all, more events like this are awesome. I need to start off by saying I am a disabled person, in case you were wondering. I have cerebral palsy, and I have been a wheelchair user for my entire life. So that's the context that I'm speaking from. But I'm also a young person, and I'm also a woman. And I think that it's important to remember all of these different parts of who I am in the world that I want to see in the future, and where we go and how we get there together. I think that there are a couple of things that would be really awesome to have, and I think there are a few ways of accessing it. So I think the first thing would be acceptance. I cannot deny that I am a disabled person. I cannot deny that it inevitably impacts my life and how I experience the world. I think it's important to remember that disabled people are globally the largest minority. But what I think that means and what it gives us is an opportunity. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of untapped, unknown skills. Disability brings us skills. It gifts us with innovation because we have to. I am a very good problem solver. I'm very good at I'm very good at finding, seeing options. I have logistical plans for every possibility most days. And I think that that's important for people to acknowledge that we kind of know what we're talking about. And my experiences as a disabled person bring knowledge, and it needs to be recognized by myself and also by the people around me. And I think we talk a lot about speaking up for the vulnerable. But I think what we need to do more of is making space for the vulnerable to speak for themselves. And to not be so precious about it being my story, because my disability is mine, but it also is shared with everybody that lives life with me. And there are a lot of allies that we can find in those moments, in those conversations, in the way that we expect people to engage with disabled people. And so I think my big vision, big picture, Kaylee, would be to be able to walk into a room and not be surprised that it's accessible. To walk into a space, to occupy more spaces loudly. I think I'm a pretty loud disabled person. To occupy space and for it to not be a phenomenal thing that I'm here. For it to be standard that disabled people are included in all of the conversations that are happening anywhere. And there was a big push for, in the disability movement of nothing about us without us. And it's moved a little bit more now to nothing without us. And I think that that's crucial in making any kind of progress, is including disabled people and disability, because it's an issue that crosses every possible issue. And if we can support disabled people, then we can support anybody. So I hope that people will come on that journey with us towards that vision.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Thank you. That's a very powerful message of nothing without us. And it should be a given. So I really want us to hear Kaylee's message and work towards that in whatever way we all can. Now, the importance of inclusion is without question. And we can only, overcome the challenges that we face as a Commonwealth community by working together as a community. So I want to turn now to Rijve. You're a passionate community development practitioner. What are some of the ways that you use your platform to address issues? And where does your passion come from?
Thank you so much, David. So for me, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be part of this panel, and I would say the youngest panel in the forum. So what we do is we do three things in Awareness 360. The first thing is youth development programs. We run different youth development programs, and through that we believe in power of young people, and through that we mobilize young people in different countries, especially in the Global South. To date, we have empowered thousands of young people in the Global South. And how we empowered them through different trainings on leadership, on community development, on project management, and how to do evaluation and monitor of their projects. So this is one thing that we do with the young people, and another thing that we do is grassroots advocacy. So what we do is we go to the grassroots communities. We work with different communities like sex workers communities, storage workers, slum dwellers, and also city dwellers as well. So we go up to them and we advocate about different social issues. One of the focus areas that we have is water, sanitation, and hygiene. So we raise awareness about different aspects of WASH. So this is what we do. And another thing is we kind of want to make the bridge between the grassroots activists with the policymakers, and also we want to influence the decision when they make, when they have different investment on WASH. So we want to increase those investments by talking to the policymakers.
Yeah, I'm incredibly inspired by the work that you're doing, reaching so many different people in different areas of the community. Where did your passion come from? Where did the idea come to start this? How did you get that energy to take charge of this future that you're creating?
Okay, so growing up, I didn't have a proper childhood. So I was victim of I'm a victim of a child abuse. And I was growing up in a boarding school, and I faced a lot of bullying and corporal punishment. And when I was in my university, so I was doing my university in Malaysia, and this is when I got exposed to a lot of international people, diverse group of people, and I kind of realized that I lack of a lot of skills, which I didn't get when I was a kid. And this is when I kind of took charge of my future, and I thought of, kind of teaching myself all of this, skills. And even I didn't know how to speak in English. So I kind of taught myself how to speak in English so that I can, make friends with other people. And this is how I kind of understood that I need to, take charge of my own future. And then I think this was the turning moment of my life when I realized that, I no longer should just sit back and just see other people are suffering. So I try to help other people by, building this platform. And till date, we have directly benefited 1.1 million people in the Global South.
Fantastic. A big round of applause for Rijve. Thank you for sharing. I want to turn now to Kendall, and I want to ask you, what was that moment for you? That you thought, I have an idea for the future. Where did that kind of drive come from? What were the values, and what is your vision for taking charge of the future?
Thank you very much for that question. In terms of that moment, or that spark moment, in terms of
if you
when...
could just move the mic a bit closer, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. So thank you very much for that question. So in terms of, that moment or that spark moment, when we talk about taking charge of our future, essentially we're talking about young persons being at the forefront of, really leading that change. And I think that has been very synonymous with, my growth and my growth path in terms of where, when I look at, sometimes I've always been that person in the room or in the space, whether it be from at school, whether it be at any community, not just to look at a problem, but being able to, not just say, this is the problem, but how could I actively engage in terms of, bringing solution to that problem. So, even that take me back, in the Caribbean at the University of the West Indies, I went into, when I came into school, I just sat there and, you tend to get these, leadership roles ascribed to you. But it's very important, that for young persons who are here and young persons on the wider scale, you do not necessarily need to have a position or a title. Change begins with you as a young person. Every morning that you get up, it's decisions that have to be made. And I think, this team comes at a very critical time in terms of not just, not just looking at the team and, we leaving here and just saying this is a buzzword, but how do we translate that into our personal, lives, and how we, all of us, have to take charge of our future. But I think the pivotal moment for me was recognizing that even coming from the Caribbean, sometimes in terms of, there may be lack of access to opportunities, but not just, being able to, and I know there's always this saying where, if there's a, we're always looking for a seat at the table, but sometimes we as young people need to be creators of that and form our, if you have an idea, whether it's big, small, just get out there and just do it. There would be criticisms, there would be challenges, life is challenging. But, I just want to, take that, in terms of your other question, in terms of my vision for the future. And I really, really like what the first speaker spoke towards inclusion. And, I just want to add to that, because we really need to make society. There's so much challenges, so much things happening across society. So we really need to ensure that we have a very inclusive society. Don't matter what your, challenges, or no matter your situation is, we need to ensure that we love each other and that we, work towards ensuring that the world is such a very inclusive space. So, but it's just going to add one more thing. And, I'm going to take the opportunity because I recognize that there are ministers, there are other persons in the room, and I want to take this opportunity as a call of action. You know, when we see that we're including young persons and we're giving them the, the opportunity, I just want to say that, it's very important that, and I just want to say going forward, that we allow young persons, and, this has been an excellent opportunity, and I want to say commendations to Lodi, Darian, and the entire Commonwealth team and the task force team. But, in terms of really taking charge, allowing young persons, not just, putting them there as placeholders or saying that we're doing this to include youth, but allow the young people, trust the young people to take the decisions and to, we may not always get it right, but I think we would learn, and I think once we create that, or we provide those opportunities and actively engage young persons, I think that bodes well for what's creating, a common future going forward. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kendall. Kendall said something very special. He said, we love each other. Do we love each other across the Commonwealth? Yes? Can we get a big yeah? I think that's really important. The other thing that he talked about was the need to build our own table. If as young people we're not finding a seat at the table, let's build our own table, and others, I'm sure, will come to us. One of the things you also talked about was the role of young people in defining their own future. And I know, Chido, in your work as the AU Youth Envoy, you must meet so many young people all across the continent. And I'd love to hear from you about your vision and the vision of young Africans and young people that you've been inspired by in your role.
Very much. First of all, it's such an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to interact with young people in this room. When I speak about the vision for the future, I envision a future that is led by young people. I mean, we speak a lot about the Africa that we want, but I envision the Africa that we want, which is for the young people and by the young people. When we speak about aspirations, specifically Aspiration 6 in Agenda 2063, it talks about an Africa whose development shall rely on the potential of its people, especially the young people. And we tend to speak a lot about the demographics too, to say that young people makes the largest population. But how can we ensure that with this largest population and the potential we're talking about in Agenda 2063, Aspiration 6 is fully materialized? I envision a future which is going to be led by young people now. The generation that we have today for young people that will create space for what is to come too. I envision a future which has inclusion. When I look at the young people we have in this room, there are more that are not represented here. There are some that do not even have access to technology or the internet to be able to tune in and listen to the conversations we're having today. We still have young people living in marginalized communities that could not be here today. So when you speak about the future, when you speak about the Africa that we want, indeed it should represent each and every young people across the continent. It should be led by the young people. It should be more about less speeches and more concrete action, and ensure that we really envision and ensure that we really put it into action beyond the demographics too. And in terms of what inspires me, honestly, is the constituency that I represent. It's such a huge responsibility, having to represent all 55 member states within Africa and young people in the diaspora. I mean, I just arrived last night from the United States, where I was engaging with young people in the diaspora, and just listening to their ideas, their vision for Africa, how they want to build Africa, the amazing work that they're doing, even in the United States. Security sector leaders too. I had an attachment at the National Defense University, which was an opportunity to engage with young security leaders, military leaders, police leaders, and these are young people that are representing the continent, that are looking at youth and peace in Africa. Not only that, we talk about public leaders. I mean, right now I see in the room my fellow colleague and friend, one of the youngest deputy ministers from Namibia, Minister Emma Theophilus. That's an inspiration. And everyone in this room is an inspiration for me. We have so many different groups that are represented. We have the NTDs, the young people combating the neglected tropical diseases. We have young people looking at climate change, becoming climate change activists. And for me, that becomes such an inspiration in terms of the vision for the Africa that we want. I'm looking forward to especially learn from the young people that are in this room in terms of the future that we can build together, because we can only do this when we stand together as the young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chido. That's right, we can only stand together. I want to turn now to Mitwa. You are the CEO of one of the largest telco companies in Rwanda, and you employ thousands of people across the country. What is the business case for investing in young people, and what is the return on investment?
David, I think the most obvious answer is found in the demographic of the Commonwealth and also of Africa. With the fact that I think the numbers have been shared quite frequently this morning around how across the Commonwealth, 60% of the population is 30 years old and below. In Africa, the median age is 19, so it'd be foolhardy for us as businesses, as private sector, to ignore this segment of the population. There's no way we're building relevant digital solutions for a population that we do not understand. So it's extremely imperative for us in the private sector and businesses and corporates alike to include that demographic. That's the obvious answer. But I wanted maybe to hint to a little secret to the people in the room around how businesses also have evolved over the last few years. And you hear a lot more of businesses, corporates, private sector players talking a lot about sustainability. And I'm sure that's a topic that we're also going to talk about during the course of the next few days. And because sustainability is such a big focus area for all businesses alike, you hear a lot of conversations around environmental, social governance issues. Now, the reason why I highlight this rather as my answer than the most obvious one being the demographic is the fact that with the high emphasis on ESG and sustainability, businesses are being more attuned to what matters to nation states. Right? So companies such as ourselves at MTN Rwanda, we even go as far as having a motto to say what matters to Rwanda matters to us. And this is not unique to MTN. It's now the evolution of companies and corporates and private sector and businesses in the world today, to the point where if we're saying that what is important to the countries is important to us as businesses to be sustainable into the future, it means that if Rwanda, as an example, sees environmental or carbon emission reduction as important, then we as MTN Rwanda are going to make a carbon net zero pledge. If, for instance, Rwanda is saying that gender empowerment is important, then we as MTN Rwanda are going to form the women empowerment workforces. We're even going to have, for instance, representation targets within the company. Now, I think you can see the pattern, right? So if Rwanda is saying that youth development and youth empowerment is important, guess what the private sector is doing? They're also thinking about how is it that we can place that same level of importance that the nation state does to this particular segment. So my answer to that question would be more a challenge to the young people that be attuned to the way businesses are evolving. And I'm giving you a little insight into what's happening in boardrooms now, right? So we're constantly thinking about how can we bridge the gap between what our intentions are and what the priorities of the nation states are, youth empowerment and youth development being a big one. Now, knowing that about businesses, about private sector, then I would then challenge the youth to say, how well are you positioning yourself to make yourself ready for those kind of opportunities that the private sector and business players are actually looking out for? I'll give you another secret. In the private sector, and I hear this a lot of feedback from young people to say, it's very difficult to approach big companies like MTN. We don't know how to get in. We don't know who to speak to. But the reality is that more times than less, private sector people are actually looking for you. Maybe we just don't have the capacity to engage with everybody at every single point in time, but trust me, our core business, for instance, in MTN is to connect, right? But we are always looking for young, vibrant ideas, which I know are plenty even in this room, in terms of solving societal problems, taking advantage of the opportunities that exist. So it's really about positioning yourself as young people and making sure that you're ready for when that opportunity comes knocking on your door. Granted, we as private sector also have a really huge role to play in trying to bridge that gap, or creating a bridge. Let me say building a bridge between us and the young people so we can walk across and meet somewhere at some point. But the business case, I think, has been spoken about a dime a dozen, and that's why I don't want to speak too much about the demographic and all of that, because the profit case and the business case is there. But I think it's important for us as young people to understand that businesses now are evolving to think more about sustainability, of which the youth form a big part.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mitwa. I think another important aspect of that is the values that young people have. If we ask young people what their values are, they value environmental protection, they value gender equality, they value skills development. So to see and hear MTN investing in that, it makes it an attractive company to be part of. So thank you for sharing. I want to now turn to Rita. The Mastercard Foundation is investing in youth employment, and that's been a big focus of the foundation. I'm wanting to understand what led to that particular focus. What was the rationale, the thinking behind it, and what are some of the impacts that you've seen of your work so far?
First of all, good morning, or is it, it's good afternoon, everyone. It's fantastic to be here. David, thank you for your question. I also want to just say I love all the messages that are coming out from this panel, and it's an honor to be with all of you here today. I think, David, what you're referring to is the Mastercard's foundation strategy, which is focusing on young people. We call it Young Africa Works, and we've set out a bold target of enabling 30 million young people, especially young women, to be able to access dignified and fulfilling work by the end of this decade, by 2030. So it's a bold goal. But it didn't just start out of nowhere. It began with a journey with our foundation, and that journey was so much part and parcel of that journey was listening to young people, working with young people, engaging with young people. And back in 2009, we made a choice to focus on Africa. And clearly because we were attracted by the demographics, but we didn't just see the demographics or needs, we saw opportunity and talent and ideas and ingenuity and energy. And that's been part and parcel of our journey. You know, we began very modestly, working with different organizations. We set out a prize called the Nzisha Prize, for example, focused on entrepreneurs between the ages of 15 and 22. And 10 years later, 150 of those entrepreneurs have created 2,500 jobs. 2,500 jobs, yeah? And so it's a journey of discovery, of understanding when young people, regardless of age, regardless of where they've come from, what their background is, with an opportunity, with someone backing that idea, they support other young people and they create change. We formed, we were talking with so many young people, and we formed a youth think tank back in 2012, and we enabled many of them to go do some research. Ask people in your community, ask leaders, ask elders, ask people in the private sector, what's needed, what are the opportunities for young people? Bring that back, please, to us, so we can start to be influenced by this knowledge and think about it in our programs. We began a major initiative called the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program back in 2012 as well. 40,000 young people in school, in higher education, in secondary education, and not just finishing school, but really accessing their inner powers, who they are, their leadership capabilities, and their need of service. And I look at those graduates today, including a state minister of infrastructure here in Rwanda, who is a Mastercard Foundation graduate. And I think, wow, that's how the world changes. And that brings me to Young Africa Works and this focus on employment, focus on entrepreneurship. And that goal of 30 million, we have a long way to go. We are just at 10% of that goal, 3 million young people working through the many initiatives across this continent. But what is important as we go through this journey is constantly thinking of some of the themes that came out of this panel. Nothing about us without us. Inclusion. Inclusion for people from all walks of life. People who have been displaced, people living with disabilities, people who have talent, and that there is a place for all of us. And I will just want to end on one other note. We're on a journey as an organization, as a foundation. But everyone here in this room, and for those who are not in this room, I know all of us individually, as leaders and as private citizens, we're on a journey too. But part of getting there, part of taking charge of our future, as Minister Rosemary mentioned a moment ago, is acting now. It's beginning. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rita, for those inspiring words. We've heard from amazing young people. Actually, all the panel are amazing young people. We've heard from youth activists. We've heard from the private sector. I'd now like to turn to the Honourable Minister Rosemary. We've heard about Young Africa Works. We'd also like to hear about Rwanda Works. And as a policymaker, what are some of the mechanisms in place to address the challenges that young people continue to face?
Thank you very much, David. I want to appreciate the panelists and also your leadership in this panel. I feel I'm short of words because they have said it all. And having a lineup of young people speaking about their issues and also having them speak about solutions and what they're doing in their communities is really impressive. As you rightly said, what are the mechanisms in place as government? Probably I'm representing government here as parent. And as government representatives present here, I know everyone is doing a lot in terms of making sure that the young people have space on the high table to discuss issues that concern them. They cannot discuss anything for youth without youth. And so they have to be inclusive. That's why even the Commonwealth and the government of Rwanda, of course, before we started even the busy week of next week, starting today, we had to first listen to you. What are the issues that are really pressing in the community that you want the support of partners present here today? And so the government mostly have, the government of Rwanda, we have put up a mechanism of involving, engaging, and having young people, providing space to hear from them. Because we cannot think for them, we cannot think what they think, we cannot sit in their space and assume, but we want them to be the ones to come up with what else is needed, what is their contribution, and what is the role of other partners, including government. And so we have created spaces where we have the Youth Connect program. We also have youth meet the president almost every 3 months, so if they go for 6 months, but with COVID, it was virtual. And so the spaces would allow the young people to bring out their aspirations, their innovations, their agility, their different things that they want to put in place to solve the problems that we experience. So besides space, we also provide participation of young people that is represented by Alodi. She represents a big number of young people in Rwanda as elected chairperson of the Youth Council. And the council cascades from the national level up to Umudugudu. Umudugudu is the last unit of administration, which is a village in Rwanda. So youth are elected at the village, youth are elected at the cell, youth are elected at the sector and the national level, but they're also part of the national, the district councils. We are together with the Minister of Local Government here, and he has the young people in the local administration that is participating in decision-making at the district level. But also we have young people that are representing others in the parliament. Present here today, we have 2 members of parliament below 30 years of age that are into the parliament. So participation in governance is very key, and that's where we allow the young people to have space and be on the table to discuss issues. So what is needed as a mechanism that we could have in space is the political will, the will to do it, the will not only to think about it, but to act on it. Not the will to say they're the numbers. We always talk about the numbers, but how do we put these numbers into action? The other, last but not least, is leverage on partners. There are many partners that we can't do it alone as government. We can't do it alone as young people. We need everybody. Everybody's bringing something on the table that all of us can make it something concrete. The Mastercard, the MTN, and other partners of young people, if we work together, we can get more output, we can have more output and outcomes than when you work alone. So as they say, when you want to go far, go with others, but when you want to go fast, go alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. I think what we've heard is the importance of listening. Listen to each other, listen to young people and make sure their voices are heard. Also participation and the importance of partnership. I want to turn now back to Kendall, and I want to ask you, what should be the role of young people in creating the world that they aspire to? How do, we've talked about creating the table if there's not a seat added for us, but how do we actually go about doing that?
So as I would have, thank you very much for that question. So in terms of how do we create that table, I think and it's very...
If you could just move a bit closer, thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's very, important, of course, that we really, and I stress this repeatedly, that we really take some personal responsibility for the team of taking charge of our future. And essentially what that speaks to us is ensuring that young persons not just look at the government, not just look at other persons to create that future. And I spoke about, young persons we as young persons taking individual responsibility. So if I want to be a doctor, if I want to be, whatever my aspirations are on that personal level. So it starts with a personal responsibility, taking decisions, taking actions. It may be I may be in a different profession or in a different path, but I say I want to be a lawyer or something else. So being able to take charge, pivot where necessary. So taking personal responsibility for taking charge of your personal future. Two, in terms of for young persons who are engaged in, social work or engaging with other or representing young persons, is important for us to really, sometimes we say that we represent young persons, but we don't actually, reach out to the young persons to see, and I think one of my co-panelists here spoke to the fact that there are young persons who, yes, they are young persons, marginalized young persons who may not be actually in this room. So I think, and I also want to tie that to personal responsibility, is that whatever the action outcomes or whatever we decide coming out of this forum, that we, go out, the responsibilities on each of us in this room to go out and implement like small little changes. Takes, something you may be interested in, if not, challenge yourself. So I think one of the most important things, because for young persons is, not just to come to the summit, not just to network, not just to take the nice selfies, but, pay attention, engage, take action. This is not just on the national delegates or the persons who, or the government, but being able to take personal responsibility. We also have other stakeholders in the room, like government, and how do we engage young persons in terms of creating that future. So I would have spoken to personal responsibility. I'd have spoken to young persons who are involved in, the social sector or representing an advocacy, but I also want to speak to, business leaders. And of course, I know that my panel, the various panelists, has been taking steps, to create that for young persons. But it's very important for government. We see that young persons represent a significant part, 60% of the Commonwealth. But when we see in terms of engaging young persons, and I like when the minister spoke about having actually young people in the parliament, because when we talk about, and I want to encourage us to encourage young persons, and for young persons to continue to have young persons in seats of power, as CEOs, as, ministers, as different things. So we're not just saying, being a deputy minister and being, assistant as well, but we also have to trust our young persons to actually take the decisions. And when I say, I'm calling on government, private sector, stakeholders, different persons, not just saying that we're having a young person or we're engaging young persons, but actually put them in the decision-making seat to take the decisions that would dictate and direct our future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kendall. I think that's critically important, and we've talked about this in terms of that idea of inclusivity. So not just about having a space for young people where they can contribute, but actually having young people at the table as well. So thank you for sharing that. I want to turn back now to Chido. Across the African Union, there is incredible, and across the continent, there is incredible work being done by young people working together. So we've heard from Kendall about the importance of taking personal responsibility and young entrepreneurs who are creating thousands of jobs. I want to turn to you now to ask about collaboration. How can young people work together in partnership, as the Minister mentioned? And what's some examples of inspiring collaboration that you've seen from young people?
Okay, thank you for that. I think talking about an example, I'll immediately go to this forum. I think this is such a great example by creating that space and creating that platform where young people can get to dialogue and they can get to meet. And such a wonderful event that the organizers have put together for the young people. And I think when it comes to collaboration, definitely creating the platforms for young people to enable them to collaborate, to enable them as well in terms of having access to be able to collaborate amongst one another across the continent. And you find that we have different sectors of young people, some people in the private sector, some young activists, but also finding a way that they can work closely together. Because what I found, especially being in this role, I mean, previously I worked in the private sector for 7 years. I was a banker, and from there moved to climate change, and from here I'm in this public office position. And what I found through that personal experience, drawing back to you know, the personal responsibility, is that there's a way that everything links together. There's definitely a way you can link the private sector to the public sector, to the international development sector, to ensure that we work together and we collaborate and have more impact. So definitely finding a way across sectors to work together, creating the platforms, having the access, but also not even forgetting the resources and building the capacity is also very important, because I know a lot of young people as well, we speak a lot about access to funding and you know the necessary training. So also being able to build that capacity that will enable us to collaborate to one another. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chido. That idea of creating the platforms and then making sure those platforms are accessible, I think comes back to this strong theme of inclusivity that we've been discussing today. And I want to turn back now to Kaylee. And we're at this incredible forum, Kaylee, where we have members, leaders all across the Commonwealth coming together. What is your message for them? What is your message for the leaders in the room, the leaders of today, the leaders of tomorrow, in terms of the key inclusivity issues that you would like them to address, through the Commonwealth?
Best.
That's great.
No, I think it's important to start with a story. So our organization started 18 years ago when we decided to raise funds for a motorized chair for me. And we were between the ages of 6 and 12. And we fully believed that we could do it. We had no doubts that we were going to achieve our goal. We knew that we were in it for the long haul. We were committed to it until we achieved it. And we keep that attitude going in our work still, where we have the young people asking, why not? And that's, as young people, we ask, why not? We don't say, oh, how are we going to do that? We say, why not? And then we figure it out as we go, which is, I think, a really powerful thing that we have the ability to harness. And as a more kind of practical sense and answer to the question, I think there are so many challenges for disabled people around the world, and especially in the Commonwealth. And I think that it's really important to start at the beginning and to remember that disabled people exist as children, and we grow and our needs evolve. And so I think two things that are really important to focus on is first education at early childhood development level, preschool. I think we have an incredible opportunity to mold an understanding of what disability is, to normalize. We don't really like using the word normal, but to normalize disability in mainstream spaces. We have an inclusive preschool back in Cape Town in South Africa, and it is phenomenal to watch 3-year-olds figure out inclusion without having conferences and forums and discussions, they learn. They learn through doing, and we learn through doing it together. And I think that if we can invest in disability and invest in educating disabled kids alongside and with our non-disabled peers, I think that would be really, really powerful in creating an understanding that if you go to school every day and you have disabled kids in your classroom, then when you go to work, when you're older and you don't see us anywhere, you're questioning that. And you're saying, oh, why don't we have more disabled people? Because we're supposed to be there. And I think it's really about figuring out what the need is and then finding the money. Because as disability is often an afterthought, it's often spoken about in terms of, well, if budget allows, then we'll make it accessible, or then we'll figure out how to educate disabled kids. But if we look at the need and say, it's gonna cost this much, and then find that much, and then do it, I think people overcomplicate it a lot, and sometimes it's simple, and solutions exist in every disabled person, and we just need to create the space to have those conversations and to make those investments.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kaylee. I wanted to come back to Rita. I saw you very engaged with what Kaylee was saying, particularly around the point of young people learning through doing. And that seems to be a very powerful call to action. What would your call to action be for young people across the Commonwealth?
So first of all, thank you so much, David. Thank you, Kaylee, for saying, why not? Why not? Yeah, right off the bat. So when I think about call to action, I've got three things with that's how my brain works. So for the first call is is really directed at folks who may or may not be in this room, and that is to employers, whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector. Let's just really listen. Listen to young people, listen and then act. We're trying to walk our own talk at the Mastercard Foundation by creating opportunities for young people, but also create opportunities inside of our house. Our largest segment of employees, 38%, are people under the age of 35. And so I call upon others who are in a position to influence opportunities for young people, whether it's internships, whether it's mentorship, whether it's an opportunity to shadow someone, or jobs, to help create those opportunities. That's number one. The second is directed to every young person, every leader, every delegate in this room, in this hall, and who may be listening. Help us. We are in a beautiful city, Kigali, and a country which has already made that jump in controlling COVID. It's not over for many parts of the world, and perhaps even in the countries where you're at. Get the word out, get the facts out, help family, help friends, help people in your social networks, get vaccinated, because that's the pathway to be able to move and to seize opportunity. And then I could not have a call for young women, women who are here, who are listening in, just to feel the power in you and your purpose. You deserve to be here, and we are also looking to you for your leadership to change this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. Thank you. That's a very, very powerful call to action, and 3 points we can definitely all take away. I want to turn back to Rijve and ask, there's work that you're doing on the ground with grassroots communities in the areas where you work. And I wanted to ask, can you give us an example of ways that young people can respond to that call. You know, ways that young people, an example of ways that you've seen, have you been inspired by young people changing their communities and taking charge of their future?
Yeah, sure. I think, you know, like if I talk about my experience, when, you know, like growing up, when I had this hardship, and then when I realized that, you know, I should no longer just sit back and, you know, just let other people suffer and go through the same process that I went through, I wouldn't have been like directly benefited this 1.1 million people. So I would suggest all my fellow young people that don't just sit back and don't just plan and don't execute your plan. So even if you fail, you gotta try, because failure is part of your success story as well. And also we need to you know, celebrate our failures as well. So this is part of your whole success story, and in order to make a bigger impact, you need to like start at some point, you know. So yeah, this would be my take on this.
Fantastic. We just need to start somewhere.
And I just want to add one more thing. There's this quote from my co-founder, which is, find your passion which bothers you. And yeah, you should look for something which you can relate to your story, because everyone has a story. So find your passion which bothers you, your life, you know, like in your community, whatever issues that you're facing which are bothering you, just find your passion and find the solution in it and just start working on it.
Fantastic. I love that. Find your passion that bothers you. I think there's so much strength we can draw from the things that we find, you know, challenging or annoying or frustrating. And I think that brings me to, I want to go over to Mitwa, because you're in an industry that is solving challenges. You're in an industry that is connecting people and solving that challenge of people who are not connected and bringing people into the conversation. So I want to understand from you, what kind of mindset should we try to adopt to drive solutions from grassroots all the way up to senior levels?
I should have acknowledged, David, the first comment you made about me. So he joked about me being one of the coolest CEOs. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But one of the questions that I get as a result is, you know, where do you get your energy, right? So one day you're in the north, next in the south, next in the east, today you're in the Commonwealth Youth Forum, tomorrow you're in CBF, et cetera, et cetera. And I think for me, the mindset is, maybe it's not even a mindset, it's us as a company and me as an individual being so deeply rooted in my why, right? So why are we doing what we're doing? Making money and making a profit are great. But like I mentioned earlier, profit alone is not what investors and shareholders are looking for, at least not anymore. They're really looking for, what is that social impact that you're going to have? What is it that beyond the profit you're looking to achieve through whatever solution you're trying to provide? So being very deeply rooted in your why is what I would consider the most important, especially where the world is changing so quickly and in so many different shapes and forms, that when those tough times hit, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's a bad sales day, et cetera, your why should be so much bigger than that challenge that you face that you'll be able to push through, and therefore also be called one day one of those coolest CEOs.
Fantastic. I think that's a great point. Understand your why. Thank you so much, Mitwa. And I think in understanding that why, we bring meaning to our work and what we're doing, and that can be a great inspiration for us. I want to turn now back to the Honourable Minister, and I want to ask about the work of the Commonwealth. How does the Commonwealth enable governments to work collectively to address some of the issues that young people are facing, and also to create new opportunities? So we have challenges, but we also have opportunities.
Thank you very much. Maybe before we speak about that, how the Commonwealth is supporting all of us, the 54 countries, to come together and solve the challenges of young people, but also support the opportunities. I just want to share how people take charge of their future. Just what inspired me is one of the young boy, I saw him in the media way back like 3 years ago. He's called Rukundo Yasiz, grade 2, primary 2. And he was going to school and in one of the suburbs in Kigali, and he was going to school, and he found along the way a leaked pipe. The water was pouring out and everybody saw it and we was passing by. But this young man did not continue. He stopped by, and he started fixing the leaking pipe. You can imagine what kind of technology was he using. He started using whatever material he had around him to fix the problem. And that's when everybody wanted to help. But many people passed by, including leaders and other people and business people, passed by. No one thought about it or even thought, this is my responsibility or this is my loss. If there is no water or is leaking right now, maybe we won't have water in the next few days. It will be leaking. And so taking charge doesn't require a lot of education. Taking charge doesn't require a lot of skills. Taking charge doesn't need to have many years, almost like the first half coming this side, or having much. It's just a heart, and you take responsibility of whatever. I just wanted to share this young man is just 8 years old, and you can see what he did. He has a big heart than anybody else who was passing by. So you can learn from even young children, right when they're playing, whatever they're doing, you can see someone who's going to be in charge of their future or someone who's going to be a spectator. If I come back to the question that you're asking about how is the Commonwealth supporting us all, the Commonwealth has set up a platform. One of them is this forum where we are right now, and it's one of the top big 4 forums, including Women Forum, including People's Forum, including the Business Forum that is happening next few days. But starting with the young people, it is to listen to you, to get your ideas, to get your motivation, inspiration, your dreams, and how do we support you? Because we want to put you at the forefront of all the decisions what we want to make. So from the decisions that will be made here, the declarations of the young people, they will be taken to the heads of state and governments meeting. There will also be an intergenerational dialogue between the heads of state meeting with the young people to hear more about what you've been discussing here. So this is the space we've been talking about, and this is what the space the Commonwealth is putting together so that we can hear your voices loud and clear. The second one is a ministerial task force that I mentioned earlier that we have our colleague ministers representing. We also listen to what the young people are doing and what they want to implement. And out of this action plan of 2 years, we want to support them to implement. The other element that I want to talk about also is the framework of putting up a youth development index. So there is a way that the Commonwealth measures the success and development and kind of key milestone. What do we want to see in terms of youth development and youth empowerment? So there is a report that comes out every 2 years. I think what we have is 2020. We're likely to have another one very soon that is going to be ranking countries, ranking institutions and ourselves as countries that are participating and supporting to see how far have we gone in terms of job creation, employability, climate change, but also governance and the rule of law, and many more indicators that we always track to see how we're doing. So this helps countries to keep on checking themselves, because if you can't measure it, then you can't do anything about it. So you need to be measuring how far we're doing and how we're doing it. So there's a lot happening, and I think we are really grateful for the support of the Commonwealth in convening us together and bringing out the best out of us all. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Minister. That draws us to the closing of this first plenary panel. Thank you so much to our panelists. We've heard today about the importance of inclusivity. We've heard about the importance of taking responsibility. I think one of the powerful things that I've also heard is that we can all take that responsibility. We can all take charge of our future regardless of where we are. We don't need a title, we don't need a table. All we need is that big heart. So a big round of applause once again to our panelists. Thank you so much.